cameras flash, but they only capture the lie. They see Richard Blackwood, the billionaire king of New York, standing beside his wife Catherine at the Metropolitan Museum Gala, the picture of American power and old money grace.
And what about
Tonight,
I'm
that
fine.
picture burns. While the city sleeps, Richard will be with her, the ambitious woman waiting in a forbidden penthouse across town. He believes he is in control. He believes he has mastered the art of having two women, one for appearances, one for appetite. What he doesn't know is that by sunrise, the king will be a pawn. His empire will crack open, and the only thing waiting for him at home will be the end he never saw coming. The ballroom suffocates under crystal chandeliers and the cloying perfume of inherited wealth mixed with desperate ambition. Richard Blackwood, 52 years old, and every inch the Titan, catches his reflection in 1,000 champagne flutes and feels the familiar tightness in his chest. Not anxiety, boredom. The profound, crushing ennui that only a man who has conquered everything can truly understand. He built Blackwood Global Logistics from his father's modest freight company into an $8 billion empire, a name whispered on trading floors and boardrooms from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. His suit, custom tailored by his personal tailor on Madison Avenue, feels less like clothing and more like armor he's worn too long. A city councilman materializes at his elbow, breath reeking of aged scotch and political favors. "Richard, magnificent evening. The new museum wing stands as a testament to your generosity." Richard nods, the practiced motion of a man who perfected the art of appearing interested 2 decades ago. The new wing was a tax strategy his accountants suggested, a public relations play his team orchestrated while he slept. He hasn't seen the architectural renderings, doesn't know what art hangs inside, couldn't summon the energy to care. His gaze drifts across the crowd and snags on his wife. Catherine Blackwood stands near the silent auction tables in a column of dove gray silk that makes her nearly invisible against the pale walls. 48 years old, platinum blonde hair swept into a chignon that must have required an hour of someone else's labor, she embodies the role of society wife with such perfection it borders on performance art. She's discussing something with the wife of a Connecticut senator, her expression one of polite, engaged interest that Richard knows is as authentic as the smile he's wearing. Catherine is beautiful, the way a marble statue is beautiful, cold, flawless, and utterly untouchable. They haven't truly touched, skin to skin, souls meeting even for a moment, in years, longer than he can remember. Their marriage is another one of his holdings, a legacy asset acquired 25 years ago when she was Catherine Vandermeer, daughter of old Greenwich money and impeccable breeding. The marriage is stable, predictable, profitable in the ways that matter to people who attend events like this. It is also completely devoid of anything resembling passion or genuine human connection. The boredom spreads through him like poison, and then he sees the antidote. Sienna Cross stands near a sculpture of twisted bronze, utterly out of place among the silver-haired donors and their carefully preserved spouses. 28 years old, she blazes in a dress the color of fresh blood, crimson silk clinging to curves that the society matrons would whisper about in powder rooms. Her dark hair cascades over one bare shoulder in waves that look artfully careless but probably cost a fortune to achieve. She shouldn't be here. This gala is strictly for senior board members and their families, the inner circle of Blackwood Global's power structure. But Sienna has a talent for appearing in rooms she wasn't invited to, for slipping past barriers that stop lesser people. Their eyes meet across 50 feet of imported marble and carefully cultivated social distance. The jolt that runs through him is physical, electric, the first real sensation he's felt in months. Sienna's dark eyes hold his with a challenge, a silent dare that bypasses every careful word being spoken around them. She doesn't smile. She simply looks, her gaze traveling down the length of his body with slow, deliberate appraisal before returning to his face. A tiny curve touches her full red lips, barely there, impossible to miss. She knows. He knows. The itch becomes a roar. His phone vibrates against his chest, the buzz a heartbeat out of sync with his own. He doesn't need to look. The message will be from her, something brief and loaded with promise. He excuses himself from the councilman mid-sentence, the man's voice fading into the background noise of string quartets and polite laughter. Richard navigates the crowd like a shark cutting through lukewarm water, instinct guiding him to his wife. Catherine's conversation with the senator's wife pauses as he approaches. He leans in, pressing his lips to her cheek. The skin is cool, like touching fine parchment, bloodless and preserved. "Eleanor, darling." His voice carries just the right note of regret mixed with importance. "I'm afraid something urgent has come up. The Singapore deal. Tokyo is panicking about the regulatory filings. I need to get on a conference call immediately, and it's going to run all night." Catherine's blue eyes meet his, clear as winter ice and just as cold. There isn't a flicker of suspicion visible on her face, or perhaps, he thinks with sudden uncomfortable clarity, there is nothing but suspicion, worn so long and so thoroughly it has become part of her bone structure, invisible and permanent. "Of course, Richard." Her voice is modulated, perfect, empty. "You work so hard." "Shall I have Thomas wait up for you?" Thomas is their driver, a man Richard pays handsomely to be invisible and discreet. "No, don't be ridiculous. I'll arrange my own car. You stay, enjoy the auction. Buy that sculpture you were admiring earlier." He pats her arm, a gesture of ownership disguised as affection, of dismissal wrapped in concern. "It's a Calder, Richard, an original mobile." The correction is gentle, but he's already turning away, already forgetting she spoke. "Whatever it is, charge it to the foundation account. Consider it an early anniversary gift." He doesn't wait for her reply, doesn't see the way her fingers tighten fractionally around her champagne flute. He feels her eyes on his back as he pushes through the crowd toward the museum's bronze entrance doors, the weight of her gaze like cold water trickling down his spine. He shrugs off the sensation. He is Richard Blackwood. He has earned this. He's built an empire, created thousands of jobs, moved the markets with his decisions. If he wants a few hours of heat to balance the ice of his marriage, who has the right to judge him? The night air of Manhattan hits him as he exits onto Fifth Avenue, crisp and sharp after the recycled warmth inside. He pulls out his phone, fingers already typing before his mind consciously decides to send the message. "My car, 10 minutes. Meet me at the Soho address." He doesn't see Sienna slip out through a side entrance 3 minutes later, her crimson dress a slash of color against the gray stone. He doesn't see his wife, Catherine, standing perfectly still by a window overlooking the avenue, watching his town car pull away into traffic. She doesn't look sad. She doesn't look angry. Her face holds no expression at all as she watches the taillights disappear, calm and still as a frozen lake in January. Then, slowly, she lifts her phone to her ear. The call connects on the first ring. Victor. Her voice is quiet but carries the weight of absolute certainty, the tone of someone giving an order they know will be executed without question. He's on his way to her now. It's time. Execute the plan. The Soho penthouse exists in the gray area between Richard's public empire and his private appetites, a monument to compartmentalization and corporate shell games. The address doesn't appear on any of his official asset disclosures. The lease is held by a Delaware corporation, which is in turn owned by another entity registered in Nevada, a maze of legal structures designed by his attorneys to be impenetrable to casual scrutiny. The space itself is aggressively modern, all floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Hudson, chrome fixtures, black leather furniture, the complete antithesis of the antique-filled Greenwich estate he shares with Catherine. This is a place for transactions, not for living. A stage set for a very specific kind of performance. When the private elevator opens directly into the living room, Sienna is already there. The crimson dress lies pooled on the white marble floor like a single drop of blood on snow. She's wearing one of his shirts, white silk with French cuffs, unbuttoned just enough to suggest rather than reveal. Her feet are bare, toenails painted the same arterial red as the discarded dress. You took your time. Her voice is low, textured with amusement and something sharper. The old guard must have been feeling chatty tonight. Richard shrugs off his jacket, drapes it over a chair, already shedding the persona he wore to the gala. Traffic was hell, and Peterson cornered me about the quarterly projections. Let them talk. Sienna moves toward him with the fluid grace of someone who knows exactly what effect she creates, who has studied the art of attraction and weaponized it. They're dinosaurs, Richard. Fossils sitting on their piles of outdated strategy, terrified of everything that's coming. You're a lion among sheep. You should be with someone who understands that, someone who thinks like you do. He catches her wrist, pulls her close enough to smell the expensive perfume she wears, something dark and spiced that makes his pulse hammer in his throat. And what am I? A lion? She rises on her toes, lips brushing the edge of his ear, breath hot against his skin. You're Richard Blackwood. You built an empire from nothing. You can have whatever you want, take whatever you need. And right now, you want me. He does. God help him, he does. He wants her ambition, which feels cleaner and more honest than Catherine's placid acceptance of his absences and infidelities. He wants her hunger, which mirrors his own and makes him feel powerful in a way that moving markets and closing deals stopped doing years ago. He wants her fire, which makes him feel young again, vital, alive, instead of slowly calcifying into another old man, counting his money and waiting to die. The night unfolds in its predictable, intoxicating patterns. They drink vintage scotch from Waterford Crystal, the kind he keeps stocked in the penthouse bar for exactly this purpose. They talk about her career, her vision for Blackwood Global's marketing strategy, ideas that are really just his own concepts from 5 years ago, repackaged with fresh language and presented with her dazzling smile. He knows this. He doesn't care. The flattery is part of the transaction, and he's willing to pay for it. The board is stale, Richard. Sienna curls on the black leather sofa, legs tucked beneath her, the shirt riding up her thighs. Peterson, Davies, Mitchell, they're relics from another era. They don't understand the new market dynamics, the shift toward integrated logistics platforms and real-time supply chain optimization. I understand it. We understand it together. This is their game, the dance they perform. She isn't just a mistress warming his bed. She's a corporate raider in training, a woman who wants the keys to the kingdom, not just access to the king. She doesn't only want his body. She wants his passwords, his board seat, his power. Patience, Bella. He uses the nickname deliberately, a small intimacy that costs him nothing and makes her eyes flash with pleasure. These things take time. You can't force a board transition without cause. Time is for people who are afraid. Her voice sharpens, the ambition showing through the seduction like bone through skin. Catherine has had 25 years, Richard. 25 years. What has she built with all that time? A reputation for arranging roses at charity luncheons? A seat on the opera board? It's pathetic. I could be your real partner, side by side, equals, building something that matters. Imagine what we could accomplish together. He smiles, enjoys the naked hunger in her voice, the way she makes no effort to hide what she wants from him. It's refreshing after Catherine's careful neutrality, her polite distance. And what about Catherine? He's playing his part in their script, asking the question she's waiting for. Sienna scoffs, dismissive. It's only complicated because you let it be complicated. You're a billionaire, Richard. Write her a check. Give her the Greenwich house and the foundation. Set her up with enough money to live out her days arranging flowers and attending gallery openings. She'd probably be relieved. She's been playing a role for so long, she's forgotten how to be anything else. The thought has appeal, he has to admit. A clean break, a fresh start. Him and Sienna as the new power couple, young enough to matter, hungry enough to keep winning. Catherine could fade into comfortable obscurity, another divorcee with too much money and too much time, invisible in the way women her age become invisible to men like him. Maybe. One day. The words slip out before he fully considers them, a promise he doesn't mean but enjoys making. You're moving too fast. He sets down his glass, reaches for her. You'll spook the board, and then we'll both lose. Am I? She uncoils from the sofa, slides onto his lap in a movement so practiced it's almost mechanical. Or am I the only person in your life willing to tell you the truth? You're trapped, Richard. Trapped in a marriage that died years ago. Trapped by people who want to keep you safe and small and manageable. I'm the only one offering you the key to get out. He kisses her then, a kiss meant to silence and claim, to reassert the power dynamic he needs to maintain. He is in control here. He is the one paying for this penthouse, this scotch, this woman's time and attention and carefully performed desire. He is buying her ambition, renting her fire, leasing her youth. It's a transaction he understands, simple and clear. He is a fool. He doesn't notice the way her eyes stay sharp and calculating even as she kisses him back, professional and perfect. He doesn't know that her brilliant marketing proposals are just bait, carefully designed to make him feel valued while she pursues her real agenda. For the past 4 months, Sienna has been methodically copying files from Blackwood Global's private server, the one that holds contracts, client lists, proprietary logistics algorithms, everything that makes the company valuable. She isn't trying to climb the ladder at his company. She's building her own empire, using his resources as the foundation, his trust as the key to the vault. And he has no idea that her greatest ally, the person who first quietly directed her toward Richard's vulnerabilities and showed her exactly which server access codes to exploit, is the same man his wife just called from the museum. Victor Sterling, Catherine's attorney, has a very expansive definition of discovery and leverage. Sienna Cross, hungry for her own piece of the American dream, is his most valuable and most unwitting asset in a much larger game. She thinks she's seducing a king to become a queen. In reality, she's the jester hired by the old queen to distract the court while the real players move the pieces that matter. As dawn begins to lighten the sky over Manhattan, painting the buildings in shades of bruised purple and gray, Richard Blackwood sleeps the deep, dreamless sleep of a man who believes utterly in his own invincibility, who has never once considered that he might not be the smartest person in any room he enters. 500 miles north, in a glass-walled office overlooking the Boston Harbor, Catherine Blackwood sits at a desk surrounded by whiteboards covered in complex algorithms and market projections. The office is functional, not opulent, filled with the quiet hum of servers and the blue glow of multiple monitors. The company name etched in frosted glass on the door reads Verity Systems, one of dozens of ambitious startups competing in Boston's tech corridor, invisible to everyone who doesn't know where to look. Catherine, dressed in a charcoal cashmere sweater and tailored slacks, her platinum hair in a practical bob instead of the elaborate style she wore at the gala, looks nothing like the museum piece who stood beside Richard just hours ago. She looks 10 years younger, alert and focused, every ounce of her considerable intelligence directed at the screens in front of her. Her attorney, Victor Sterling, sits across from her, tablet in hand. Victor looks more like a rumpled literature professor than a legal assassin, gray hair perpetually disheveled, wire-rimmed glasses sliding down his nose. But his mind is a precision instrument, capable of finding and exploiting weaknesses in legal structures that other lawyers don't even know exist. He's the only man Richard Blackwood ever truly feared in a negotiation, which is exactly why Richard had him blacklisted from every major firm in New York a decade ago. Catherine found him teaching a quiet seminar on contract law at Harvard, recognized his value, and recruited him to her side. Service was confirmed at 7:02 this morning, right on the front steps. Victor's voice is dry, precise. Thomas had visual confirmation. Richard is home now. Catherine takes a slow sip of her tea. English breakfast, no sugar. Good. Victor scrolls through his tablet, checking off items with methodical satisfaction. The injunction was filed at 8:01. The temporary restraining order was served to his office at 8:05. The board was notified at 8:10. The Singapore partners received notice of the asset freeze at 8:11. He glances up, allows himself a small smile. As of this moment, 8:15 Eastern Time, Richard Blackwood is financially paralyzed. He cannot access the joint accounts. He cannot move his shares. His high-limit cards have been flagged and reduced to standard limits as the joint account holder's prerogative. He cannot complete the Singapore transaction. Catherine sets down her teacup with precise care. And cross? Victor's smile widens fractionally. Her company-issued credit cards were deactivated at 800 hours. The lease on the Soho penthouse, held by that absurd shell corporation, was terminated by the landlord this morning for breach of the morals clause embedded in the commercial lease. I recently began representing the property owner, purely coincidentally, of course. Building security is escorting Ms. Cross from the premises as we speak. Catherine's expression remains neutral, controlled. She feels no pity for Sienna Cross, no sisterhood or sympathy. The younger woman made her choices, pursued her ambitions, played the game and lost. She served her purpose. Nothing more needs to be said about her. Victor leans back, regarding Catherine with something approaching admiration. I have to admit, this is the most surgical corporate exfiltration I've ever witnessed. 9 months of planning. When did you know? When did it shift from enduring a bad marriage to planning his complete destruction? Catherine looks out the window at the gray Boston morning, the harbor stretching cold and vast toward the horizon. It wasn't a plan at first. It was a realization, a moment of clarity. She tells him about Christmas dinner 9 months ago, the night that changed everything. Not another affair. Richard had always had affairs, an endless parade of younger women, flight attendants and associates, and whoever else caught his attention that week. She had made her peace with that reality years ago, understood it as the price of the stability and resources her marriage provided. The affairs were just another line item in the cost-benefit analysis of being Mrs. Richard Blackwood. But 9 months ago, their son Daniel came home for Christmas, 26 years old, trying to build something meaningful with his life, instead of just managing wealth he didn't earn. Daniel had started a small nonprofit in Boston, using his Harvard computer science degree to build logistics platforms for food banks and disaster relief organizations. Real work that helped real people. He came to his father during Christmas dinner in front of Catherine and her sister and Daniel's girlfriend and asked for a bridge loan. $50,000. Not to buy a sports car or fund a vacation, to make payroll for the 5 people working with him, to keep the lights on for another quarter while they pursued grant funding. Richard laughed. Not a chuckle, not a dismissive brush-off, but actual laughter, loud and cruel, and designed to humiliate. He called Daniel a sentimental fool, said he was wasting his trust fund and his education on poverty tourism, playing at charity while real men built real businesses. The words flayed Daniel in front of everyone, stripped away his dignity and his hope with surgical precision. Catherine watched her son's face crumble, saw the light go out of his eyes, and in that moment she saw Richard clearly for the first time in 25 years. Not as her husband, not as a titan of industry, but as a blight. A destructive force that didn't build anything except his own ego. A man who consumed everything around him and gave nothing back. Who measured his worth in dollars and power and never once considered that he might be destroying the people who loved him. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was silent, Catherine opened a new laptop purchased with cash. She created a new bank account using the inheritance her grandmother had left her years ago. Money Richard had always dismissed as pocket change, barely worth acknowledging. She quietly re-enrolled in the computer science master's program she had abandoned 25 years earlier when she married him, finishing the degree online over the next 7 months. She hadn't just been planning garden parties and attending charity galas for the past 2 decades. She had been learning, observing, understanding the logistics industry from the inside, while everyone assumed she was just decorative. And she had been remembering the algorithm she wrote 20 years ago, fresh out of her undergraduate engineering program, the predictive routing system that became the foundation of Blackwood Global's competitive advantage. Richard had taken her work, filed the patent under his name alone, built his empire on her intellectual property while she smiled at dinner parties and pretended not to notice. She had been young then, in love, stupid enough to believe that marriage meant partnership, that his success would somehow be shared success. She knows better now. Verity Systems Incorporated 6 months ago, funded by her grandmother's inheritance and strategic investments from venture capitalists Victor introduced her to. People who saw the potential in her revolutionary logistics AI. The patent was secured 5 months ago, a system that doesn't just optimize routes, but predicts bottlenecks and adjusts in real time, making Blackwood Global's infrastructure look like a horse and buggy operation trying to compete with Tesla. Beta testing with 2 major clients ran for 8 weeks, proving the system worked better than anything else on the market. Official contracts were signed 2 weeks ago, major corporations ready to abandon Blackwood Global the moment they had legal justification to switch. Catherine didn't just want to leave Richard, she wanted to make him irrelevant. She wanted to prove that everything he built was built on foundations she created, and without her, he was nothing but ego and expensive suits. He didn't just cheat on me, Victor. Catherine's voice is quiet, but carries an edge sharp enough to cut. He bored me. He disappointed me. He looked at our brilliant son and saw failure because Daniel wanted to help people instead of exploit them. Richard thought I was an ornament, a trophy he could polish and display and ignore. He forgot that ornaments are just objects waiting for the right moment to be taken out of the box and put to better use. She had known about Sienna from the beginning, had in fact subtly encouraged the relationship. She made sure Sienna's marketing proposals reached Richard's desk, made sure the young woman received an invitation to the gala, despite not being senior enough to warrant one. Catherine needed a final, undeniable public justification for divorce, needed the morals clause in Richard's CEO contract to be triggered, needed photographic evidence of adultery to make everything else fall into place. Sienna thought she was playing Richard. She had no idea Catherine was playing them both. Victor pulls up a new document on his tablet. All business again. Phase 2. The board. They're already panicking. The stock opened down 8% on news of the divorce and asset freeze. When the market realizes the Singapore deal can't close, we're looking at another 15 to 20% drop before lunch. Catherine nods. And the article? Scheduled to drop at 10:15, right as the panic peaks. The Wall Street Journal piece details Verity's technology, includes quotes from the two major clients announcing they're terminating their Blackwood Global contracts and signing with us instead. It's going to be a bloodbath. Good. Catherine stands, walks to the whiteboard, picks up a marker. They'll want to negotiate. Offer me a settlement to go away quietly. Let Richard save face and maintain control. Victor raises an eyebrow. And you'll say? Catherine smiles, small and cold and absolutely certain. I'm going to tell them I don't want a settlement. I want the company. All of it. The sun rises watery and indifferent over Connecticut as Richard Blackwood wakes in the unfamiliar bed, head pounding from too much scotch and too little sleep. The light slanting through the floor-to-ceiling windows is harsh, unforgiving, showing every speck of dust floating in the air of the penthouse. He feels the familiar aches, the dull throb behind his eyes, the stiffness in his neck from pillows designed for aesthetics rather than comfort, and the sour taste of regret's cousin, inconvenience. He hates mornings after. They're messy, and Richard Blackwood has spent his entire adult life eliminating mess from his existence, compartmentalizing, controlling, managing every variable to maintain the pristine surface of his perfect life. Sienna sleeps beside him, dark hair spilled across white sheets like an oil slick, face relaxed and young in the morning light. She looks vulnerable, almost innocent. But Richard knows better. Vulnerability is a weapon in her arsenal, not a genuine state. In his world, among his people, weakness is something you display strategically or exploit ruthlessly. There is no in-between. He extracts himself from the bed with practiced silence, retrieves his clothes from where they were discarded across the floor. The man who stares back from the bathroom mirror is a stranger for a moment, disheveled and creased, his $5,000 shirt wrinkled beyond repair, his carefully maintained facade cracking around the edges. He looks like what he is, a man who has been used, who traded money and power for a few hours of feeling wanted. Richard smooths his hair with hands that shake slightly, buttons his cuffs, reconstructs the armor of Richard Blackwood, titan of industry, over the weakness of Richard Blackwood, aging man, desperate to feel young again. He doesn't leave a note for Sienna. He doesn't kiss her goodbye. The transaction is complete. The account is settled. Time to return to the other life, the other performance. The ride back to Greenwich is one he has made 100 times or more, a grim pilgrimage from sin to sanctuary, from the chaos of Manhattan to the manicured perfection of Connecticut's Gold Coast. His driver, Thomas, a silent man who has worked for the Blackwood family for 15 years, keeps his eyes locked on the road ahead. Usually, Thomas offers a quiet greeting, a professional acknowledgement of Richard's presence. Today, there is only silence. The Bentley purrs through awakening streets, crossing from the grit and energy of the city into the carefully preserved beauty of the suburbs, where every lawn is perfect and every hedge is trimmed to identical heights. Usually, during these drives, Richard feels a sense of satisfaction, of having successfully juggled his two lives without consequence, the master of his universe bending reality to his will. Today, something feels wrong. The air in the car carries a strange weight, thick and oppressive. Thomas's silence isn't the comfortable quiet of professional discretion. It's something else, something deliberate. As they turn onto the long, tree-lined drive leading to his estate, Richard feels unease coiling in his gut. Too quiet. By 7 in the morning, the grounds should be active with staff. Gardeners tending the heritage roses Catherine cultivated with obsessive care. Housekeepers preparing breakfast, security making their rounds. Today there is nothing but silence and stillness, the grounds abandoned. The gravel crunches under the tires, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead air. The house itself, A formidable Georgian mansion that has stood on Catherine's family land for over a century looks asleep or abandoned. No lights in the windows, no movement, no signs of life. Thomas, what the hell is going on? Richard hears the edge in his own voice, sharp and defensive. Thomas brings the car to a stop at the grand portico, turns to meet Richard's eyes in the rearview mirror for the first time all morning. His expression is professionally blank, giving nothing away. Mrs. Blackwood gave the entire household staff the week off, sir, effective yesterday evening. She what? Why wasn't I informed? She indicated you were aware of the decision, sir, for the spring cleaning. Thomas says the words spring cleaning the way someone else might say funeral arrangements, flat and final. Richard feels his chest tighten, confusion mixing with the first threads of real alarm. Spring cleaning? We've never dismissed the entire staff. Ever. What the hell is she thinking? Thomas exits the vehicle, walks around to open Richard's door with his usual efficiency. He stands there in his perfect driver's uniform, waiting. Mrs. Blackwood arranged for my final payment personally, sir, along with a very generous severance package. Retirement bonus, health insurance continuation, the works. She was quite thoughtful about it. Severance? Richard's voice rises despite his effort to maintain control. Retirement? You're not retiring, Thomas. I didn't authorize any of this. Thomas meets his gaze directly, no longer employee to employer, but man to man. Nevertheless, sir, it's done. I wanted to thank you for 15 years of employment. It's been a privilege. He doesn't wait for a response, doesn't linger for the tip Richard would normally provide. Thomas simply walks to a modest sedan parked near the service entrance, gets in, and drives away down the long driveway without looking back once. Richard stands alone on the portico, still wearing yesterday's ruined suit, feeling the morning cold seep through the fabric. He realizes with a shock that startles him that he doesn't have his overcoat. He left it at the penthouse, draped over Sienna's sofa, another small piece of his carefully constructed life left behind in the wrong place. Cursing under his breath, Richard fumbles for his keys, finds them buried in his pocket beneath his phone and wallet. He never uses his keys. The door is always opened for him by Thomas or the household staff. One of 1,000 small services he has taken for granted for so long, he forgot they were services at all. The lock turns with a mechanical click that sounds too loud. Richard lets himself into the grand foyer, and the silence that greets him is absolute. The air is cold, the heating system is off. The house feels hollow, emptied of everything that made it a home rather than just an expensive collection of rooms. Catherine. His voice echoes off marble floors and soaring ceilings, swallowed by the vast emptiness. Nothing. No response, no footsteps, no sign that anyone has been here for hours. Richard moves through the ground floor, each step increasing his sense of wrongness, of fundamental displacement. The grand drawing room stops him cold. The walls are bare. The Monet that Catherine spent months tracking down through auction houses and private sales, the 2 Rothko canvases she called her quiet rebellion, the valuable Alexander Calder mobile that hung in the center of the room, all of it is gone. Empty spaces and hanging wires mark where art once lived, scars on the perfect walls. Catherine! He's shouting now, real panic threading through his voice, turning it harsh and desperate. He storms through the rest of the ground floor. The kitchen is empty, cabinets bare, the commercial-grade appliances gleaming and unused. The pantry that normally holds enough food to feed an army has been cleared out completely. He takes the grand, sweeping staircase 2 steps at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs, adrenaline flooding his system. The master suite. He bursts through the double doors and stops dead. Empty. The four-poster bed that has sat in this room for 3 generations is still here, but stripped bare, the linens removed. He crosses to Catherine's walk-in closet, throws open the doors, and finds a cavern. Racks upon racks of empty hangers, hundreds of them, where her extensive wardrobe once hung. Every dress, every shoe, every one of the designer handbags she collected with quiet dedication, all of it gone. Richard spins, checks his own closet. Untouched. Every suit perfectly aligned, every shirt pressed and ready, every pair of shoes polished and placed. She took nothing of his. She evacuated only herself, erased her presence from the house with surgical precision, left him surrounded by his own things in rooms that suddenly feel like a museum to his isolation. He backs out of the master suite, his mind racing, trying to understand. This isn't anger. This isn't a fight that will blow over after a few days of cold silence and eventual reconciliation. This is systematic, planned, thorough. This is an evacuation executed with military precision. Where did she go? Her sister in Boston? Her mother's place in Palm Beach? How did she move all of this? The logistics alone would have required weeks of planning, coordination, a level of organization that defies everything he thought he knew about his wife. He walks slowly back down the stairs, one hand on the banister to steady himself, and moves toward his study. This room, at least, should be untouched. His sanctuary, the one space in the house that belongs entirely to him, filled with dark mahogany and green leather, the smell of old books and aged scotch, and success. He pushes open the door, and everything is exactly as it should be. His awards and citations cover the walls, proof of his achievements and status. The crystal decanters on the sidebar are full. His massive desk sits in the center of the room, commanding and imposing, the throne from which he has ruled his empire for 2 decades. On the perfect, polished mahogany surface, placed in the exact center with deliberate care, sits a single, thick, cream-colored envelope. Richard recognizes the stationery immediately. It's the same expensive cardstock Catherine uses for her charity correspondence, heavy and textured, embossed with her family crest. But this envelope isn't addressed to a donor or a duchess, or any of the carefully cultivated connections in her social network. It has only his name, written in her perfect, elegant script. Richard. He stares at the envelope for a long moment, circling the desk like a predator suddenly uncertain whether he's walking into a trap. His hands are shaking again. He pours himself scotch from the nearest decanter, downs it in one burning gulp that grounds him in physical sensation, gives him something concrete to focus on besides the growing dread in his chest. Finally, he snatches the envelope, tearing it open with a violence that surprises him. No wax seal, no dramatic flourishes. Catherine has never been dramatic. She is precise, methodical, thorough. Inside there is no letter, no tear-stained confession, no angry handwritten accusations. There is only a thick legal document, pages bound with a metal clasp, professional and impersonal. The cover sheet reads, Superior Court of the State of Connecticut, Judicial District of Stamford, Norwalk, case number FSTCV-25608. Blackwood, Catherine M., plaintiff, versus Blackwood, Richard P., defendant. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Richard reads the words 3 times, but his brain refuses to process their meaning. Dissolution of marriage. Not divorce, not separation, but dissolution. Erasure. The complete legal termination of their union, clinical and sterile and absolutely final. The rage that has been simmering in his chest since he found the empty house explodes into white-hot fury. Divorce? She's divorcing me? She's leaving me? He rips through the pages, scanning for words he recognizes, for explanations that make sense. Irreconcilable differences, dissipation of marital assets, and then, there in black and white, formal legal language. Adultery. Attached to the back of the petition is a separate motion, and behind that, marked Exhibit A, evidence. Richard flips to it, and his blood turns to ice in his veins. A photograph. Not a grainy, long-lens shot from some private investigator lurking in shadows. This is crystal clear, high-resolution, professionally composed. It shows him, unmistakably him, standing in the lobby of the Soho building last night. His arm is around Sienna's waist. He is kissing her neck. Her crimson dress is a splash of damning color against his dark suit. The timestamp printed in the bottom corner reads 11:52 p.m., exactly 1 hour after he left the museum gala. He turns the page with numb fingers. Exhibit B. Another photo. Same location, same clarity. Him leaving the building this morning, exhausted and disheveled. The timestamp? 6:48 a.m. There are more. Dozens more. Not just Sienna. Caroline, the flight attendant he spent a weekend with in Miami last year, caught on camera on the hotel balcony at the Fontainebleau. Amelia, the wife of his Chicago banker, getting into a cab with him in the Gold Coast neighborhood. Every affair, every indiscretion, every moment he thought was private and secret, documented with dates and times and locations, a comprehensive portfolio of his sins laid out like evidence at a trial. How? The word comes out as a whisper, inadequate and broken. How could she have known? How could she have proven any of this? Catherine doesn't hire private investigators. She doesn't plot revenge. She is the gentle, naive wife who plans garden parties and attends opera board meetings. She doesn't understand this world of surveillance and evidence gathering. She doesn't know how to fight this way. Except she clearly does. And she clearly has. Richard scrambles for his phone, punches in the number for Gregory Walsh, his personal attorney, the most ruthless and expensive legal mind in New York. Gregory will handle this. Gregory will crush her, turn this around, make it go away. The call goes straight to voicemail. The message that plays is Gregory's voice, but the words are wrong. All wrong. This is Gregory Walsh. I am currently unavailable. If this is a personal matter, please hang up and do not leave a message. If this is a professional matter regarding the Blackwood Global Board transition, all inquiries are now being directed to the office of Victor Sterling. Thank you. Richard drops the phone, hears it clatter on the mahogany desk. Board transition? Victor Sterling? What the hell is happening? He tries his office next. His assistant Janine picks up on the second ring, but her voice is high and strained, trembling with barely suppressed panic.
Mr. Blackwood, sir, I don't know what to tell you.
The board called an emergency meeting an hour ago. They're in session now. It's about the morals clause in your employment contract and the injunction. Sir, they received copies of everything, the photos, the divorce filing, all of it. Richard's world tilts on its axis. The morals clause. That's standard boilerplate language in executive contracts, meaningless legal theater designed to make shareholders feel protected. It's never actually enforced. It can't be enforced just for having affairs. Half the CEOs in America would be fired tomorrow if adultery alone violated their contracts. The morals clause is nothing. It doesn't matter. Janine's voice cracks slightly. It matters when it's paired with the asset freeze, sir. And the misappropriation allegations. They're saying you used company resources for personal matters. The Soho penthouse lease. It went through a Blackwood Global subsidiary. They're here now, sir. Security is boxing up your office. I have to go. The line goes dead. Richard stares at the phone in his hand, then back at the stack of legal documents on his desk. He missed something. He was so focused on the divorce petition and the photographs that he didn't read carefully. He flips back through the pages with frantic urgency. There. Not just a petition for dissolution of marriage, a temporary restraining order and emergency motion to freeze assets pending full forensic audit. The language is dense and technical, but the meaning is clear enough. Prevent the defendant, Richard P. Blackwood, from hiding, transferring, or leveraging community property pending equitable distribution. Hiding, transferring, or leveraging. The words repeat in his mind like a death knell. The Singapore deal. The $2 billion acquisition he used as his excuse last night to abandon the gala. The transaction he has spent 6 months structuring and negotiating. The deal requires him to pledge his personal shares in Blackwood Global as collateral, using marital property to guarantee the financing. The deal is set for final approval today, this morning, in approximately 2 hours. If his assets are frozen, if he cannot pledge those shares, the deal collapses. The Singapore partners will walk away. The stock will plummet on news of the failed transaction. His reputation will be shredded. The board will panic. This isn't a divorce. This is a corporate assassination, executed with precision timing and perfect knowledge of his vulnerabilities. Every piece moving into place at exactly the right moment to cause maximum destruction. He looks at the divorce petition again, at the photographs of him with Sienna, the careless, smug expression on his own face as he kissed her neck, believing he was untouchable, believing he had earned the right to take whatever he wanted without consequence. Catherine Vandermeer Blackwood, the woman who arranged flowers and sat silently at dinner parties, the woman he dismissed as a museum piece, decorative and harmless and utterly without power. She didn't just leave him. She didn't just file for divorce. She set a bomb under his entire existence, placed every charge with perfect precision, and waited until he was in exactly the right position before detonating everything at once. The silence of the house is no longer just absence. It is the vacuum left by an explosion, the hollow space where his life used to be. Richard Blackwood, master of the universe, king of his domain, stands alone in his study, surrounded by his awards and his accomplishments and his expensive possessions, and realizes with crystalline, terrible clarity that he is standing at ground zero of his own destruction. The bomb has detonated, and he never even heard the timer counting down. Catherine Blackwood's office in Boston holds none of the gilded excess of her Greenwich life. The space is ruthlessly functional, whiteboards covering 2 walls with equations and logistics flowcharts, server racks humming quietly in the